Hey YouTube, it's Crafty here. Today I'm going to show you how to remake Terraria's Lihzhard temple in 3D. I'll be showing you how to create the cave, what settings to adjust in WorldMaker to achieve fog rays and nice bounce lighting, and I'll also show you how you can quickly turn the Lihzhard temple into a temple with an underground lake. Let's get started. We're going to start by building the cave. And to do that, I'm going to search for sandstone in the search bar, and I'm going to start dragging off props that I like. And I'm going to position these rocks to be the wall, or the main body of the cave. And this workflow of combining 3D meshes to create an environment is the same workflow that Epic Games uses to create one of their latest demos, Valley of the Ancient. So I'm arranging these sandstone rocks to be roughly in the shape of a room, or a cavity in the earth in this case. And I'm also going to add a solid mesh behind these rock props because these props are one-sided props, meaning light can go through them from one side but not the other. Before creating this world, I already knew I wanted a hole in the ceiling to allow for light to come through in order to create god rays and nice bounce lighting. So I'm going to make that hole by positioning these rocks that have an overhang in them in such a way so that it looks like a cave entrance that's recently been created by a cave-in or a landslide. Next up, I am going to block off the entire top side of the cave with a solid wall to prevent any light from coming in. And we're gonna make this roof pretty in just a second. The process of making the roof is similar to the body of the cave. I'm just rotating the sandstone rocks to be facing downwards, and I'm also making sure to use multiple varieties of rocks and scaling them up to different sizes to prevent repetition. Right now the cave is looking a little bit dark, so I'm going to fix that by opening the sky and weather menu by pressing Y on my keyboard, and I'm going to edit the sun angle and time of day sliders to direct some of the sunlight through the opening of the cave. And I'm also going to increase the indirect lighting intensity slider in order to increase the strength of the bounce light. This allows the cave to be lit with colored light that's bouncing from the floor to the walls. Notice how the walls of the cave is picking up the color that's being reflected by the floor. Now it's time to make the ground. And the workflow is, again, very similar to creating the body of the cave. I'm positioning these flat sandstone rock meshes and duplicating them, but I'm also rotating them to prevent repetition. To add god rays in WorldMaker, all you have to do is to increase the fog density slider. But 0.13 is a little bit too much, so let's just tone that down. And I'm also going to adjust the angle of the sun in order to make it light the cave better. The cave is looking pretty good for now, so I'm going to start building the temple. And one of the most recognizable parts of Terraria's Lihzhard temple is the locked gate that prevents you from going inside without defeating Plantera. So I'm going to resize this normal sized door into something that looks more like a gate. And for the temple walls, I'm going to add this stone trim here with a lot of carvings and moss on it. But it's pretty small, so I'm going to resize that to be more wall-sized. And I'm going to duplicate it and arrange it into a wall and move the whole thing closer to the cave walls. To break up the monotony of the wall, I'm going to add some pillars, and it's going to be made of two parts. The first is this pillar base, which kind of looks like an altar of some sort, and the second part is this Roman column that I'm going to enlarge to fit the proportions of the temple. And I'm going to duplicate them and position them like a capital I with serif, so it looks like more of a supporting structure instead of just placed there willy-nilly. And after 35 minutes of building, our Lihzhard temple is starting to look pretty good. And at this point, I just wanted to know what this environment would look like if it was flooded with water. So I just added a water plane and expanded it to fill most of the ground. And if I wanted to increase the water level, I could just move this water plane up a little bit. And if I wanted to create a shoreline, I could do the same with the ground. So that's what this environment would look like if it had an underground lake or puddle. But we're not building a submerged temple, we're building the Lihzhard temple. So we need to finish up by adding the Lihzhard altar. But before we do that, at this point, I wanted to change the lighting to look more like Terraria's Lihzhard temple. So I changed the sun's natural colors into a more reddish brown. But in the end, I decided that I didn't like this look and went back to the sun's natural colors. And I also felt that the ground was a little bit too bumpy or gravelly without the water. So I deleted some of the bumpier rock meshes and replaced them with some smoother ones, while also rotating and resizing them in order to prevent repetition. To create the altar, I used the same pillar-based object that you see in the pillars on the temple walls. And to create the glowing sun on the pillar, I spawned a light by pressing L on my keyboard and changing its color to yellow. And to create the sunburst surrounding the sun, I spawned in a 3D text object by pressing T on my keyboard and changing the text into a lesser than and greater than symbol. And I positioned those in the shape of the sunburst. And just to add a little bit more detail to the Lihzhard altar, I placed a couple of these temple structures on the side of the altar. So the Lihzhard temple right now is pretty much finished. All that's left to do now is to jump into photo mode and take a bunch of pictures and shoot some establishing shots from a bunch of different angles. So I'm going to jump into photo mode and I'm going to go to a camera position that I saved earlier. That's the mouse of the cave. So in photo mode, WorldMaker provides you with a bunch of video sliders, and we're going to use all of these sliders in order to help record our shot. And the first thing that we're going to enable is the camera shake slider. And remember, with camera shake, less is more. So we're going to put that to a lower value, something like 0.27 here. And we're also going to turn on camera smoothing. Now, just notice the difference between a high value on camera smoothing and a low value in camera smoothing. These are actually like somewhat inverted, but you'll see what I mean. So with a camera smoothing set to 30, you're basically playing an FPS. You know, there's no delay between the movement of your mouse and the movement of the in-game camera. But watch what happens when I turn it all the way down to 2. There's a lot more lag in the camera movement. It's kind of like you're shooting with a gimbal, or maybe like the camera is a lot heavier. So yeah, it's this is basically going to help you with like panning and tilting. It's going to enable you to like orbit around a subject really smoothly. It's as if you're like animating this per keyframe instead of just using your mouse. Again, this is to help you like to move the camera and to orbit a subject. And finally, I'm going to change the movement speed to a lower value, something like 60 or 70 here, in order to, that's actually a little bit too slow, maybe 164, 261, there you go. I'm going to change the movement speed to 261 in order to better to record our establishing shots here. Okay, so let's go jump back to camera position 1, and I think we're ready to shoot. And remember, when you're shooting this way, you can be really creative with how you want to shoot. You know, you don't have to set keyframes or animate the camera movement on a per frame basis. You can just fly around and shoot and move the camera however you want. So like this, I'm like creating an establishing shot where, you know, I'm recording most of the cave, and maybe I want to like get a little closer and record some of the finer details on the walls. I can totally do that. And there you go. And that's how I built Terraria's Lihzhard Temple in WorldMaker. The creation of this world took about 2 hours, and this world and the Dust 2 world is part of WorldMaker's first update, the Underground Temple update. You can check out WorldMaker and the update on Steam with the link in the description. And thank you so much for watching.